Let's start by jumping back to our sunlight level. I'll just toggle that off. And now's the time to bring in our metahuman sublevel. So I'll just click and drag that up. Great, so we've got a metahuman that I've just placed here. We've also awkwardly got one over here, kind of sitting. I'm not covering animation or poses in this series. So we'll want to set a frame here, and remember we did create a Cinecamera already, so we've got a level with that ready to go. I can just click perspective and then view through that Cinecamera. And I'll just fly this around and set a rough frame. Now, I'm not really covering too many camera settings here, but we do need to set a focus point. So I'm just going to search for focus in the details panel, switch this from manual to tracking. And I've already placed a focus mark on her eyes, so I can just select that first focus mark. Great, and now we can fly this camera around and we don't have to worry about that. I'm also really quick just going to toggle that lamp with the emissive materials off. If you want, you can apply the old materials to a duplicate model like I have right here. Okay. So first things first, in this medium close-up here, I may have gone overboard with that volumetric fog. So I'll make sure I'm in my sunlight level, and let's go find our direct lights. And let's play around with these volumetric scattering levels. So if I zero that out, okay, maybe not 0, maybe something like 5 or 7. I just want to see a little bit of detail outside. It doesn't have to be blue sky. Okay. So the skylight and the one rect light we do have outside this window is not doing exactly what we want with her face here. Global illumination is helping to bring her ambience up, but not really in a realistic way. That mostly just helps us out for the overall environment. So the next steps here are to continue this motivation of light through the window with our own actors specifically directed towards this metahuman. I'll bring in a new rect light. And I'm just going to place this kind of right along the window here and be an approximate position. And I'll make this maybe 200 by 200, pretty soft light. I don't really need to play with the barn doors just yet, but one thing I will do is turn the indirect lighting intensity to 0, because these lights we're setting right here, I only really want them to light our metahuman and not bring up the ambience levels we've already set. So now that we've done that, I can go back down into our Cinecamera view, and let's lower this intensity quite a bit. It's also a good opportunity to change the color temperature. I might make this something like 7200 just so it's a little blue outside. Great. I'm also going to change the color temperature of our Cinecamera. So I'll search for that right here, and I'm going to make this 5600. I want this scene to be a little colder. Okay, that's great. And now that we've done that, I might actually bring this back to 6500 for that rect light. Great. So that's our first light in keying our metahuman from the left side here. Let's duplicate that rect light, and we're going to wrap it around her right side so we can continue that soft light from this window. Before I do that, I am just going to organize a little bit. I'll make it movable. Throw this in a metahumans folder in our sunlight folder. And I'll just alt-click this, drag it a little closer, and rotate it towards her. Something like that. And I don't need it to be quite so big, so let's make this something like 150 by 150. And let's take a look. Obviously, way too much, so I can just zero it out and slowly bring it up. 0.5, 1, even that's already too much. Maybe just 0.4. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice, right? We've still just got this soft light. It feels like it's coming from the window. That's what's important here. Okay, and we'll do one final duplicate here just to fill in from the front just a little bit. And this is going to be very minimal. So I'll set that to 0.1. Take a look. And I'm also going to warm this light up because as we bring these lights around the front, they don't really need to feel like it's cold window light. This could just be some warm ambience that's directly in front of her. So I'll make this 5500. And in the spirit of changing things, let's just change that middle rect light to 6000. Okay. If we off and on these three lights, you see how much they do. And it's not really doing that much to our background. We are doing a little bit of fill here, but we'll address that a little bit later. But overall, this feels really natural. It feels like there's just some soft window light illuminating her. I might also create one last eye light. So if we wanted to, remember we could throw textures on those rect lights or we could make it a different shape. What I'm going to do is actually just add a little point of light as an eye light. And that's pretty easily done with a point light. I'll just drag one in. I'll throw this almost directly over the camera. Obviously, this needs to come down. I'm going to go 0.01, so just the faintest light. Now, if we did go a little too much with this, something like 0.1, for example, you'll see we have this sharp shadow because, right, that point light is infinitely small. So this is a good opportunity to use that source radius slider and soften this up. And you'll actually see it in her eyes. So we don't want to go too big because that kind of defeats the purpose here. Maybe just something like that. 8. All right. All right. So we've done that. Now I can bring that intensity back down, 0.01, just so it's the faintest little dot in her eyes. Great. The last thing I want to do in this sunlight setup is to motivate a little bit more light from this splotch of hard light on the wall here. Because this whole scene's being ray traced, we're actually getting an accurate reflection on her left side already. That's not global illumination doing that. That's actually just ray traced reflections on her cheek. So that's pretty impressive that we already get that without having to do anything. But I do want to bring it up just a little bit more. I can just duplicate one of those rect lights that I had made. I'll drag it over there, rotate it, and then this can be a little bit smaller, maybe 75 by 75. Jump back in our view here, and let's just move this around. Kind of see what it's doing. Maybe bring the intensity up just so we can tell what's happening. Okay. So now you get the idea. That might be too far over. I just want a little bit. So now that I can see the direction is working well, let's bring this back down. 0.5 worked out nicely. And since this is kind of warm, hard sunlight here, I am going to make this a much warmer color. So something like 4500 Kelvin. There we go. So if I turn this off and on, we kind of miss it. As soon as it's gone, I kind of miss it. So I'm glad we did this. It might still be a little bit too much, but at this point, we've got all the tools we need to kind of tweak to your heart's content. I'll call this 0.35 for now. Okay. Awesome. So even though we've kind of been lighting to a close-up here, we can still just back out and you'll see everything kind of holds true for even a medium shot if we needed. And we do have some room to kind of fly around a bit. So we could play with our camera exposure or maybe lessen the fog again, just so we could see some blue sky out here. But since we've got the bloom going on and there's so many different factors at play, we have room to move this camera around and the photorealism kind of holds. So with this angle out of the way, we can move on to the HDRI level next. In the name of efficiency here, I'm actually just going to time lapse us through this, as I'm really just doing exactly the same process as before. And just like that, with the same steps, we've created a new frame and new soft light with this HDRI background. And once again, we kind of have some flexibility with this frame. And if we wanted to come over this way, we maybe would bring a light in here to kind of motivate something. But since I'm over here by this window, this is working out really well. Let's move on to our nighttime iteration to wrap things up now. Just pop right out and turn that sublevel on. And for this look, I'm going to change it up a little bit more and actually face back in that direction, but still stick with this metahuman who's sitting down. I'm going to duplicate our camera one more time. Make sure I take a look through Cinecamera 3. Might actually switch to unlit just to frame here. All right. And just so this isn't spooky, I'm just going to hide this metahuman. Okay, so as you can see here, this is kind of a nicer blank slate situation to be in when lighting a subject, since we've kind of got very subtle ambience going on and most of our lighting is on that side of the room and we haven't really done anything over here yet. Obviously, we can start from scratch. Speaking of the background though, this reminds me, I will just switch back to this lamp. And the main idea for this nighttime one now, kind of based on our original references again, is I'm going to keep a practical fixture in our frame here and have that motivate light on our subject. I don't necessarily want to reveal that there's a light on this side of the room. I just want it to feel naturally lit from this one lamp. So let's just copy some of our existing lights actually. This is once again why it's really beneficial to use all these sublevels. I'll just jump right to our HDRI level, grab the two rect lights on this side, copy, turn this off, jump back in here, double click so I'm in our night level, and hit paste. All right, and if we look at our third camera, we'll see we've got nice soft light, doesn't really have any motivation here, and the color's a little wrong, so I'll just make both of these 3200. Maybe I'll split the difference on both of these. We'll call it 4500. And now here's what I'd like to do. Since the light kind of feels like it is coming from the opposite direction of this lamp, let's scoot this sightier, so more in profile here. And actually start out by creating some light that is coming from that lamp. Do something like this, wrap it around just like that. So, and now, you know what, now that we're on this side and we do see that warm light, I will make this 3200. So if I turn game mode off, you'll see that this does feel somewhat natural, but it's still pretty dark for her here. I may even want to still make this more backlighty and also shrink the size down a bit. And shrink the size down a bit just so the reflection's a little sharper. Okay. And if I turn our other light back on, that doesn't really make sense just yet. So to help us out, we're going to do kind of what we did in the sunlight level, is we just want to wrap that light a little bit. So this is a method in cinematography for just keeping things natural. And if I bring this intensity back up, maybe 0.25, 0.4. That's kind of nice. And we'll do one more copy here. Just alt click it. And if I select all three of these, you kind of see what we're doing. Now we're just wrapping the light on her left side. So let's check that last one and maybe bring that down. There we go. So without telling the audience that, hey, there's a bright light on directly in front of her, we're still subtly suggesting that the only real light source in the room right now is this lamp. It's still a very natural look and pretty pleasing to look at. And even if I haven't convinced you of that, we've still just got this beautiful soft light that is hard to question. The one other thing I might want to do here is, since we do have some color contrast going on and we've got some moonlight on the floor, let's just fill her right side in with some colder light to kind of help ground this. So all I have to do here is just duplicate this edge light on this side. I'll click and drag that over. Jump back into the camera. And I'll approximate that color real quick. Something like that. Now that's obviously a little too much. Maybe lower it down and make this a little softer, and then not nearly as bright. I might play with the color just a little bit more and still just bring the intensity down. So that's kind of nice right there. And the only thing I'm really missing is some fill from the front. Our background is kind of hazy. The black levels are kind of lifted from the volumetric fog. And since she's it's a little crunchy here in her hair, so I'm just going to work on that real quick. And I want that to be blue light, so I'll just duplicate that blue light we had just set. And you probably could have guessed this time I'm going to wrap it from that side, since that's where our cold light is kind of coming from. And this is going to be just the subtlest amount of fill, if that. There we go. So that's pretty subtle. Probably still too much, actually. Things are going to get pretty subjective at this point, but I'm pretty happy with this, where we've got some warm light motivated by our practical over here, and we've got some ambience from the moonlight, kind of giving a little fill to her right side. And same thing again, we have some room to move the camera around and we could widen out, but you don't want to go too far, otherwise you're going to need to motivate some light with another practical, for example. So we couldn't necessarily shoot this shot right now. At this point, we're nearly done exploring how ray trace lights can help us achieve cinematic photorealism in Unreal Engine. The next step and last step is going to be to learn about and imitate real-life grip equipment, or tools that can help you shape and take away light.